Do you recognize these men? There's George Washington, a founding father of our country. Jesus, Messiah of religion practiced by billions, and Adolf Hitler, leader of Nazi Germany. These are men who, for better or worse, have been decisive shapers of history. Now let's take a look at this guy. Can any of you recognize him? Probably not. The amount of devastation this little fellow has wreaked on mankind is unparalleled by any man that has or ever will live. Most of you know the history behind the men I mentioned, but what about him? How did he get here? He is actually the byproduct of the same decision that led to us being in this building, wearing the clothes that we're wearing, and eating the food that we eat. The root of all epidemic diseases, like smallpox, can be traced to the practice of agriculture. At this point, we can divide history into two groups of people, farmers and hunter-gatherers. Unless you got up at 4 this morning, met with the rest of your tribe, and went antelope hunting, it's safe for me to assume you fall into the farming camp. In a modern sense, this means a small group of farmers are able to find enough food for a much larger group of people, allowing us to have more cerebral pursuits, like the arts, philosophy, or the advancement of technology. Another thing that agriculture allows us to do is conquering. Let's think about it. In a one-on-one fight, a farmer would have no advantage against a hunter-gatherer. However, because of food production, the farmer lives in a much denser population than the hunter-gatherer. 10 farmers would have a significant advantage over one hunter-gatherer. The farmer would also have much better arms and weapons and arms to battle a whole slew of nasty germs, while the hunter-gatherer would have primitive hand weapons and a very exposed immune system. A phenomenal example of this was when Spanish conquistadors, specifically Cortez, came to the Americas. They had significantly better technology to agriculture, and they subsequently had diseases that the Indians had never been exposed to. Cortez, in 1519, came to the coast of Mexico with 600 Spaniards to take over the militaristic Aztecs, an empire of 25 million people. They were able to fight to the capital, Tenochtitlan, with loss of 2/3 of their force. But with them was a single person, an African slave, that was affected with smallpox. When 100 years after Cortez arrived, their population had been reduced to 1.5 million people. Over 94% of the indigenous population had perished due to smallpox. Sorry. This is because the humans began to practice agriculture, a small group of people were able to provide food for a much larger group of people, meaning that basis of technology could take place. Since people were no longer nomadic, they began to live in cities. These were a great place for disease to spread. Packed human populations allowed for the spread of disease to be rapid, especially under a lack of a modern sanitation system and understanding of medicine. Since farmers also lived with animals right next door and sometimes with them. All the major killers throughout our history, smallpox, flu, HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, plague, measles, and cholera, all evolved from animals. I mean, until World War II, more soldiers died of disease than of combat. How many of you flew over spring break? Chances are, if you did, you flew out of O'Hare, the world's busiest airport. In the couple of hours you spent there, you came into contact with more people than you could count. And then you boarded a plane that shared the same air and bathroom as 200 of your closest friends. After you all got off and went your separate ways, anything that one of you may have had, you could all potentially have. With the rising increase in international travel for Americans, diseases that were once dismissed for being exotic now becoming a serious threat, as the time to travel anywhere in the world is not nearly as long as your average disease. The United States is not nearly as susceptible to disease as it was in the past. But what if a disease would affect as many of us as smallpox, or a particularly deadly strain of influenza, much more likely scenario? In this hypothetical situation, the Center of Disease Control, CDC, and the World Health Organization, WHO, begin to advise the global community on what they should do. No, a common misconception is the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic. An epidemic is local, just a city or small affected area, while a pandemic is a global disease. Because governments have been doing everything they could to buy enough time for a vaccine to be developed, a slew of tactics will be in place. Quarantines will be put into effect, travel restrictions will not allow travel in or out of the hardest hit areas, and social distancing will be in place. This means the closure of schools, workplaces, and public congregations. All of these, in effect, along with other procedures, should buy enough time for a vaccine to be developed. A phenomenal example of this was the recent Ebola outbreak. I'm sure we all remember, you couldn't flip on the news without hearing how Ebola was going to be the end of the world as we knew it. However, after all the dust settled, only 10 Americans, all in the medical field, became infected. This is a great example, however, because we employed most of the tactics I stated earlier. We restricted air travel in and out of Western Africa. We also quarantine all those who exhibit any symptom of the virus. As I stated earlier, all epidemic diseases come from animals. Ebola is no exception. Ebola actually comes from fruit bats, a delicacy in Western Africa. But all of this raises the question, do we have anything to fear? The answer is yes and no. While many may argue with our advances in modern medicine and the narrowing gap between first and third world countries, that we may have nothing to fear. I believe that there will never be a time where diseases will simply be history. Thank you.